kind of stuff you'd expect to see in this sort of plan. Of those 47 recommendations, we were able to evaluate to some degree or another about 33 of them. So it's not the whole picture. But unfortunately or sadly, the overall assessment we came up with was not particularly good. We evaluated things into 4 categories, scored them from 0 to 4. 0 being nothing was done, 1 being some minimal action, something was done, 2 being some action was taken, more than minimal, 3, some significant action was taken, and then 4, hey, the whole thing got done, was fully satisfied, and that was great. Unfortunately, the average score across those 7 areas was about 0.56 on the scale of 4. Not very flattering. Okay. So what I want to ask or suggest is that perhaps the DNR would like to take a look at this plan and do your own assessment. See, do you agree with us? Have we missed something? Can you add something to what we've done? Can we help you? We can provide you the data that we have if you'd like it. We'd like to see your look at if you take a look at our data and then come back and say, hey, maybe we can work together to figure out what should be done, what hasn't been done, and what we can do to get a better watershed, not like watershed management plan. Thank you.
Dan Brand and then Elizabeth White.
I am going to tell you you're saying it's wrong. It's Devin.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Devin Brandt, and I was asked to come here tonight and share my personal story of how the lake has impacted my life. And also to ask for further and better efforts at restoration that they be made. I've worked at the lake since I was 15 years old, mowing lawns and doing snow and leaf removal like my dad. And before that, he has worked there since he was a kid with his dad. When my dad first had me, he used a lot of the profits from the lake to raise me as a single parent. And then when I got to be 15, I started working with him to save money for college. And in 2010, I got a scholarship to go to Bucknell, but to make the move and to pay for the housing costs, I needed the money that I made from the lake. And if it weren't for the property values of the lake owners that we work for, I don't think I would have been able to afford the education that I have received. And I just want to let you all know that it has been very important to me, and I know there are others out there like me who work at the lake and who are putting other kids through college and making an effort to better themselves, and they're using the lake properties as a way to do that.
Elizabeth White, then Barbara Baylor.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth White. I have lived in Garrett County for all these 22 years. And I've actually been doing some work for the Friends of Deep Creek Lake. And we received a letter from Joanne Marchie. She lives in Crofton, Maryland. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it here tonight. But she did ask us to read this letter for her, so I'm going to read it. To whom it may concern. I am indeed shocked and concerned to learn that Deep Creek Lake is not accorded the same significance as to warrant funding for responsible management of its health and maintenance as the Bay. To be truthful, Deep Creek Lake shares the same level of importance, revenue-wise and recreation-wise, as the Bay, but somehow remains a stepchild in the eyes of our governor and funding, none to be specific, in the budget. This cannot continue to be tolerated, and this petition reflects the concern and desire of tax-paying citizens of Maryland to move the Save Deep Creek Lake to the forefront of Governor O'Malley's agenda for 2013. I have been the owner of a vacation home in Deep Creek Lake for some years now, and I do not want to see my beautiful lake or investment there deteriorate because of neglect or lack of concern. I challenge Governor O'Malley and DNR Secretary Griffin to immediately set forth a plan to begin addressing the state of Deep Creek Lake, not only as a valuable resource of the state, but for its many citizens who live and work and pay taxes in the area. Sincerely, Joanne Marchi.
Barbara Beeler, then Jane Avery.
Hi, my name is Barbara Beeler. What hasn't been talked about is the editorials that have been recently run in the Republican, and particularly the last editorial, which was an interview between the editor and the secretary of DNR, Mr. Griffin, in which, among other things, he stated clearly that there's no money for Deep Creek Lake from the public, from the state of Maryland, and that there is some of the sections of the lake are so far gone that really can't be restored. We have three issues. Issue one is Maryland. The lake was bought by the state of Maryland. This was a conscious choice, and when they made that conscious choice in 2001, they undertook two things: to manage the lake and to provide the financial resources for that management. That the management principles were clearly stated in the Code of Maryland: protect the natural resource, ensure its ecological balance, and support its highest use as a recreational resource. These are great principles. We are not seeing the management going to do that, and now we're told there isn't any money. The second issue is management. This has been alluded to before. DNR, when purchased the lake, created lake management and the Policy and Review Board to oversee management finances. The assumption was the county would be the third active partner, and they would all, quote, coordinate their efforts. A long list of recommendations was made, developed. They're good recommendations. They've been ignored. The third issue is money. Secretary Griffin has stated there is no money for Deep Creek Lake. Let's go back to the buy-down process, which should have been a warning sign for us. We were really stupid to have let that go forward. Maryland sold off most of the existing buffer strip. This was our legacy from Penelec, which has been essential to the health of the lake since it was built in 1925. And we sold most of it off. And what happened to the $13 million? Did it go to the lake? No, it went to the Maryland General Fund. So now we're being told there's no money for the lake. We should have had that $13 million, and it was, as we know, went at rock bottom price. So here we are. I have a code that has to be dredged. It's going to cost me, if I pay for it, $1 million for my share of getting my part of it done. If anybody wants to buy a property for my property for an extra $1 million, just let me sell you that and the Brooklyn Bridge. Thank you.
Avery, then Mike Ahern.
Mr. Secretary, you scheduled this meeting when most lake stakeholders are not here. You scheduled this meeting during the week when folks with jobs cannot attend. There are hundreds of people impacted, hundreds who would like to express their concerns. They cannot. Over 1,000 of them have signed our petition. So today I represent not only my own voice, but the voices of numerous others who have emailed their feelings to Friends of Deep Creek Lake. Many of the responses were very similar, so to encapsulate them, imagine this whole half of the crowd dressed in 50s clothes with fancy dances, singing, "Save the lake, save 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 the lake." And then the solo guy comes in with a little hat on and he sings, "Governor O'Malley, please, 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 please save the lake. It used to be so pure, but now it's just a sewer, messing up the Gulf of Mexico." "I want to strongly voice my support to Save the Lake," says one fella. "I've enjoyed it for over 50 years. It's a state treasure that deserves state support." "It's a great treasure and we can't afford to lose it. How about some stimulus money?" "We are part of Maryland too. Act now before it's too late and cost 5 times as much to reclaim a living lake." "We are aware of the Save the Bay initiative, the importance of the natural environment conservation at the shore, and feel that it is very important for the government of the state of Maryland to support environmental remediation statewide, not just on the Eastern Shore area. Save the lake, we are part of Maryland too. I grew up sailing on Deep Creek Lake and am dismayed how fast this invasive vegetation is taking over the lake. As a small business owner who builds Flying Scot sailboats, I urge the state of Maryland to get involved in restoring the lake to the beautiful condition I remember. When we purchased our lake property in 1992, well, we were able to keep our boat in the water until Labor Day. But for the past 5 years, we've had to take our boats out sooner. The last 2 years, the boats had to come out by the middle of August. Unfortunately, I have to sell this lake property and haven't had any offers for the past 2 years because of the level of the lake in our cove on Green Glade. The cove is a wonderful location for children, but it is becoming unusable. Please save the lake for us and for the future. We here on Hazelhurst had to push the dock out 40 yards this year. Save the lake. It's Western Maryland's treasure. Every bit as important to us as the Bay is to Central Maryland and as Ocean City is to the Eastern Shore. The Bay and the Ocean City have benefited greatly from your efforts. Our lake can be saved if you take action now. My final comment is my own. And I'm simply going to state that for over 60 years, I've loved swimming in Deep Creek Lake. And now, I don't.
Wow. You gotta get this on YouTube. It'll go viral. Mr. Secretary, Commissioners, Mr. Yule. My name is Michael Ahern. I'm here to discuss the political ramifications of the lake situation. Good news is Friends of Deep Creek Lake released a newsletter just yesterday, I think, or very recently, that said there's cause for optimism, anticipating some of your remarks here today. And certainly your work during the recent storm and the governors and the rest of the county and state things, all that's, appreciated. However, with respect to the rest of your remarks, they were filled with inconsistencies and barren of any sense of urgency or any source of funding to correct any of these problems. You mentioned you're studying and studying and studying. All right. I've lived here for 4 years or so. In that time, I've observed a heartbreaking deterioration of the lake. And we all know what has been due to the low water levels, the high temperatures, the fish kills in the thousands, milfoils, entangling swimmers and sailboats, erosion of the lakefront, and sediment clogging the lake bottom. We all know that. Terrible problems are a result, at the very least, of mismanagement. And at worst, gross negligence, I think, when you think of what this place was like, since we started coming up 20 years ago. Let me direct the rest of my comments to you, Mr. Yule, in the hope that they'll be redirected to the governor. Over a year ago, Secretary Griffin's here on the inspection floor came to the conclusion, and as much as said, that there are serious problems here with all of the above-named situations. More recently, he observed that portions of the lake were likely unrecoverable. Now his position, and policy, I guess, is that even after moving further down the road of this terrible situation, there's no state money available for restoration due to the so-called recession, even though the GDP has been growing for at least the last 2 years and is expected to grow, another point or two over the next couple. The recession is defined as a retraction of the economy. That's not what's happened in the last couple of years. So don't blame everything, on a recession, Mr. Secretary. And he suggested that the lake owners themselves fund the restoration. Okay, two seconds. The Maryland owns the lake, okay, not the homeowners. Okay, so I don't know where this comes from that the homeowners should fund all the restoration. Last comment is this all should be treated not necessarily as a political situation or certainly not an economic situation. This is a moral obligation we have to our children and our grandchildren to preserve our natural resources. That's not being done. It hasn't been done for the last 4 years since I've been here. And, the sense of urgency has to happen, and the funding has to happen. Thanks.
Ralph Schmidt.
Ralph Schmidt and Charles Hoffitz.
Secretary Griffin and your staff and our county commissioners and everybody here today. I have voiced my opinion several times in letters to the editor and public forum. And I'd like to state right now, finally, the Republican newspaper and Friends of Deep Creek Lake have voiced a very strong advocacy for taking a stand that the state of Maryland must accept responsibility for the welfare and preservation of Deep Creek Lake. Republican writing 5 editorials regarding the deterioration of the lake, Friends of Deep Creek Lake currently circulating a petition to the state to provide state funds toward preservation of the lake and surrounding watershed. It is my understanding that they have now over 1,000 signed petitions. I have voiced my own advocacy in letters over the years. It is my understanding that Ocean City receives Maryland state tax money of $500,000 a year to replace and replenish sand from erosion and to protect Ocean City due to storm surge. Why is not the state providing funds to protect Deep Creek Lake? Why are the lake access and lakefront property owners paying for the total cost of the DNR and the Lake Management Office in dock fees under Penelec? That's $10 a year, and now in our association is $144. Why do lake access and front property owners have to pay for the total upkeep of the DNR buffer strip, including protecting the lakeshore line from erosion and controlling state and county road storm runoff that affects our own private property as well as the buffer strip? Where are the commissioners and the Maryland elected delegate and senator in lobbying for state funds to protect Deep Creek Lake as is done with Ocean City? Now is the time for the commissioners to put forth funds to protect Deep Creek Lake and the watershed. Now is the time for Garrett County State Delegate and Senator to put forth an appropriation bill in 2013 to get state funds to protect and preserve state-owned property. Deep Creek Lake. It is time for all of the flush taxes that be allocated toward the renovation of Deep Creek Lake and not the bay.
Charles Hoffman and Jess Whitmore.
Good evening, my name is Chuck Moffitt. I have a simple question, and it's in regard to dredging. A few years ago, at New Germany State Park, there was a proposal to dredge the lake there. Did that money come from the state?
Jess Whitmore, then Max Peterson.
Secretary, Commissioners, everybody else. My name is Jess Whitmore, and I'm a councilman for the town of Friendsville. And my comments aren't necessarily popular with this particular crowd, but we're on the other side of the mountain. We get the water from the lake, the dam releases, and we're a designated stakeholder in the lake, as designated by Maryland Department of Environment. We've been going to their stakeholder meetings for decades. And, you know, we're real happy with Maryland Department of Environment's involvement in lake water level. And that's, the town of Friendsville, of course, sympathizes with lake property owners when it comes to sediment and SADs. But I will tell you this, Secretary, when people want the lake to stay high, that takes away what Friendsville has come to develop around. We're developing our town around the dam releases. I believe we get pretty much 66 dam releases a year if the drought season doesn't come in. And we have businesses that are created around it. They're becoming more and more dependent on those dam releases. 66 days of river opportunity are not much, but it's what we have. And we're a small municipality. I just wanted to come here today and throw my little piece of the mix into your consideration. I will make the observation aware to you that your Policy and Review Board has got many different stakeholders on it, but nobody other than Maryland Fisheries that's on the other side of the mountain. Nobody that's a stakeholder in the dam releases. And I think it's fair to you that you might consider having somebody help you with. You have a subcommittee called the Lake Water Level Subcommittee and on the PRB, and I just wanted to let you know that we're aware of it and that they don't have the input that I think is fairly necessary for you to make considerations. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Max Peterson, then Alan Nixon.
Commissioner and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Max Peterson. I'm a relative newcomer to the lake. I moved up here, live here full-time since 2005. When I bought my dock and boat, there was no noxious weed at the end of it. 6 years later, I was surprised this fall to note that noxious weed growing at the end of my dock, and I know it's because my boat gets picked up on the propeller or whatever and brought. The point that I'd like to make is I'd like to ask you to re-examine the weevil. The studies that I've done on the internet, and I realize not everything is true on the internet, seem to indicate it's a North American species. I did hear that it's considered invasive to Maryland, but I'd like to request that you folks re-examine that again. It seems like a relatively simple fix to the problem. You could do it now and move on. And finally, I support saving the bay. It's good. But there are a number of states other than Maryland that are stakeholders in that should be brought into the fold. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and New York. And this is tongue-in-cheek, of course. let's build a dam where the Susquehanna is and let them deal with the problem up there. Seriously, we should find a way to include them in the tax base. Already has been mentioned, beach replenishment. Some of that money ought to really come back to Deep Creek. We're all state taxpayers, and I appreciate your coming up here, and thank you for your attention.
Alan Dixon, then Bill and Marie Alsop.
My questions have been addressed, and I appreciate being able to attend this meeting and get the information. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. Bill and Marie.
Hello, Secretary Griffin. Thank you for coming.
Marie, Mike did.
Oh,
There you go.
in 1946, my daddy built our cabin. And I've been on the lake. I'm sorry, I get emotional. I've been on the lake. As a little girl, I would go out in the water, jump in the water. And it was beautiful, it was clear, it was crisp. And my brother and I'd stay in the water till our lips turned blue, my hands shriveled up. I still love to come to the lake. I still love it, but I won't go in the water. It's horrible. It's full of weeds. It's invasive stuff in there. And I just get so emotional because this is my lake. Please help us. I'm sorry.
Mr. Secretary, Commissioners, I have one question that I would like to ask relative to the issues we've dealt with here today. We talk about water level, and now that Maryland has always owned the water, now that they've purchased the land, why is it we are not controlling our water level through these critical periods during the summer? If the MDE needs to take a look at the permit that they have struck with Bloomfield, it would seem to me when it drops below the rule bands during the critical periods of the summer, July, August, and September, that we would put a plug in this. With all due respect to our folks down in Friendsville, we are the ones that are suffering when it goes below the rule band, and we slough it off to the fact that Bloomberg controls that. We need to step up, take care of this, and put a plug in this lake.
Howard Janoski, then David Shelley.
Mr. Secretary, Commissioners, my name is Howard Janoski. Property is 789 Penn Point Road, better known as Pond Run Cove. Mr. Secretary, I think we talked about dredging in Pond Run Cove. I think it's excavating. There is no water in Pond Run Cove. You need to clarify that in your studies. You can bring them in, you don't need a boat. Any bulldozer will do it. Believe me. I have pictures. I'm sorry to say, most of my doctrine, most of the advertisements you see is what is wrong with Deep Creek Lake. I'm not here to criticize DNR. I'm here for some recommendations. Like the gentleman before me, I think we need to take a look at that study and the release of water that's leaving Deep Creek Lake. As the gentleman who worked for DNR said, we have changing climates, changing rainfall, and it seems like the temperatures are rising. I think we need to take a look at those charts once again and look at the flow levels, just like the gentleman before me stated, and make sure that in September that we have enough water in the lake to float the boats in Pond Run. Number one, our Autumn Glory is one of our largest revenuing in the county. At the end of August and September, I had no water in my dock whatsoever. How can I rent a cabin or a lodge on Deep Creek Lake with no water at the pier? The commissioners realize this. They know it is a cash cow with the people coming up here. We need your help. I apologize that our representatives are not here, our delegate or our senator. I understand they needed to be in Annapolis. But it's very important that we relook these things over. Also, when we do this dredging, you know, we're going to have more water in the lake. More water in the lake is going to be more turbines. We're looking at green energy. I think possibly with your people, you could go back to the federal government and say, we can produce more energy, okay, more electricity by dredging and getting more water to go through the turbine. I don't know if anyone's ever looked at that, but there should be some federal funds available. I thank you for your time and your consideration. Thank you, sir.
David Shelling, then Barbara Stork.
Secretary Griffin, Commissioner. My comments today basically involve bedload movement or runoff coming, silting up the lake. I have two suggestions that would I think improve the comprehensiveness of the plan. I spent 30 years as a professor at Maryland, most of the time as a consultant to the state of Maryland, specifically for the State Highway Administration. Part of that was the policy on runoffs of Agnes 100-year storm, 20-year storm. And since that time, and my time up here, I've walked the lake. I'm having more difficulty today walking, but and I've noticed that the runoff coefficients have changed. So my comments to the hydrologist here is you have to be modeling what's happening around the lake, specifically the road system in Garrett County, which is under control of the county itself. The runoff coming off the roadway into the receiving waters is, I think, part of the problem with the silt buildup. That's why it's so turgid down the line into the lake itself. It used to be clear, now it's muddy after every storm. And the type of material used rather than salt, I don't know what that plays, but I think that calcium has screwed up our lodge. The wood is not the same. Everything is gray. I don't know what the answer is to that, but it's also the amount of material put on the roads. The circumferential roads around the lake are significant in the amount of runoff coming into the lake. And also the small streams coming into the lake from the runoff is completely different than it was when we first moved up here in the 80s. It's not permeable in that it's going to the groundwater and aquifers. It's going around to the lake. There's more, the runoff coefficients are higher, and you can see that runoff go in. I'm pleased to see that you have gauging stations, but that's not the answer necessarily, because those are large software for TR20, the large software runoff hydrology and hydrographs. I think you need a small watershed area, one by one, all around the lake, to look at exactly what's happening. Yes. There's one resource you might want to look into, and the Department of Civil Engineering has a resource called the Remote Sensing Center. And Dr. Reagan started that. It's been very successful. It's a satellite-based system, and it does give you a lot of detail on a real-time basis. That may be one area. The last area I'd like to talk about is the speed of the boats. The boats are getting faster and faster, and closer and closer to the docks, and there's more erosion along the shore. That to me means nothing but erosion and more bed load going into the coves when it participates out. So my comments are all technical, but I think they're important, and that the silting seems to be a real problem on this lake. And you have to take a high detailed analysis of what is planning on the lake.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Barbara Stork and Ted Gristle.
Yes, my name is Barbara Stork on Skippers Point Road. And a lot of the comments have been made here. We all know of the erosion, the sediment, the grasses, the goose poop. We all know about all those things. But I want to tell that, and I appreciate the commissioners and the secretary coming here and know we have a problem now. But are they really going to do anything about the problem? That's the question. You have wonderful neighbors that don't own the lake, but we go by all the rules you make for the lake. You have a wonderful neighbor in me. I had 2 enormous trees go down in this storm, which many of you have. And DNR came and said I could take them out, which is good because it'll impede my dock if I don't. But it's going to cost me $2,000. So I don't know, I mean, we're helping you guys maintain this area, but we have to go by everything you mandate. It has to be channels upon channels upon channels. You know, a lot of us want to do erosion walls, but you know, you want permits of $1,500 even to look at our erosion walls to help. I mean, if I had a neighbor that would help me, I'd be sure calling upon him and treating them pretty nice. I mean, you know, we all know we pay lots of taxes here. We help you there. We help in the bay. Is the bay people going to help us when our lakes are sore like theirs is? You know, all of us have an investment here. Every one of us here. You have an investment in your home. You have an investment in your memories. You have an investment with us here as commissioners and your economic value. You've got to get on top of this stuff. We all know this. We're speaking, this little people here, we got a lot of people here for a Wednesday at 4 o'clock in November.